fronted Motley Crue, played with former Kiss guitarist Bruce Kulick in 2 bands, and is now the lead singer of the Dead Daisies. Our guest today is vocalist John Corabi on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 19 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wink, and today we have singer and guitarist John Corabi as our guest. But before we get started, a quick announcement on our program. The VVN Music Podcast can now be heard on the iHeartRadio site and their various apps, along with YouTube. These new venues for the show are in addition to the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Libsyn, and of course vvnmusic.com, as places on the net and your mobile devices where you can hear our latest program or many of our archive shows. Plus, we're working on even more episodes of the VVN Music Podcast with new guests and a number of our archived interviews with some of the greatest veteran artists of our time. Check out our podcast on any of these great services. John Corabi became the lead singer of Motley Crue in February of 1992 when the band parted ways with Vince Neil. Over the next 5 years, he recorded the group's self-titled album from 1994, along with the Quaternary EP, before Neil made the decision to return to the band. Since then, he's been a member of Bruce Kulick's band Union, the Eric Singer Project, 24/7, Brides of Destruction, and today, the Dead Daisies. In February 2015, John was brought in as a temporary replacement in the Daisies for the ailing John Stevens. 2 months later, he was announced as a permanent part of the band and was with the Daisies for their historic concert in Cuba, along with band members David Lowy, Richard Fortus, Marco Mendoza, Dizzy Reed, and Bernard Fowler. The concert was preserved on the album and in the documentary Revolution. Last month, the band released their brand new album, Make Some Noise, which contains 10 originals of the band along with 2 covers, all hearkening back to the rock of the 70s and 80s. We talked to John from New York City. You're in New York right now rehearsing for the Kiss tour, right?
Well, we're actually, we're here in New York City. We're rehearsing, doing a bunch of press and interviews and radio, and then we're actually leaving. We're not doing the whole Kiss tour. We're doing the back half of it. We're heading over to Europe first, and we're doing a bunch of festivals and then some headlining shows on our own. But it's going to be a very busy summer.
You know, you've said that you really don't like the tag supergroup, and what would you call the Dead Daisies then? More of a musicians collective?
You know, honestly, I just, we're just a bunch of friends that have been, we've all known each other for years. I've known, now Doug's involved in this thing. I've known Doug since probably 1978 or 79, something like that. So it's really just a bunch of friends hanging out, writing music, and just going out and doing the best they can to put a smile on people's faces live. You know what I mean? Supergroup that tends to put a lot of expectations, on people, and not that we wouldn't be able to deliver said expectations, but we just, I don't know. It's kind of I don't know, that whole supergroup thing. It's like, unless you're blind faith or, you know what I mean? I don't like using that term.
How did you join the band? You came in when John Stevens was sick, I believe?
I don't know what the deal was with that. I still, to be honest with you, I still don't quite understand what happened there. As far as I'm concerned, like that John Stevens gent, I never met him, but God, he's got such a great voice. I mean, I've got nothing but props for that guy. So I don't know totally what happened. I know him and David started the band, and somewhere along the line, John was going through some personal issues and some things. And then, I came in to do Cuba, and start the next record. And, here we are now. But I don't know. I don't know if there was, I know John was going through some personal issues. I do know that because it's obviously publicly documented. I don't know if there was anything other than that. You know what I mean? I think initially they had that trip to Cuba set up, and John at the time couldn't leave to go to Cuba. He couldn't leave Australia.
Did you find any resistance at all or any comments from the fans when you first came in after John having been the head man for so long?
A few, but honestly, it was more from like just a handful of fans from Australia. I didn't. But you know what? Honestly, I'm so kind of used to that after going through it. I mean, I kind of went through the same thing on a much larger scale, though, with Motley. It's going to take a lot more than an insult to, pierce my armor.
The band has had kind of a revolving membership. How hard did you find it to come into an established band, but also to be working with new people? It would seem like there'd be a ramp-up time there.
No, not really. I mean, and I just want to clarify, there's an incredible list of people that have been involved in this thing, but I think from the get-go, I mean, if we really sit down and look at this from the outside in, basically the first record was written by David and John. They got together, just the two of those guys. They worked up a bunch of ideas. And then they went into the studio, so they needed, they tracked it with a group of musicians. And, I got to be honest with you, man, when you go, like, being in the studio and recording is one thing, but then getting out on the road and starting to live with people, being around them all the time, tends to be a little more difficult than being just in the studio. There's quirks and there's all this other stuff. So I'm sure in the very beginning they had to make a few changes, but one of the things that I've kind of come to realize is I think that there is a core band here. Now had Dizzy and Richard not gone back to Guns N' Roses, there would still be a core band here, a band that's kind of been together, minus me, that would have been together for a couple of years and a couple of records. The list that you're seeing with a lot of these names is people that have filled in for one of the members of the band. And that was one of the things that was so appealing to me when I first hooked up with these guys, is they said, we're going to do some tours, and I was like, wow, because I have a solo thing, my own solo band that I tour with. So when they called me, I'm like, wow, I'm kind of just getting my thing off the ground and we're doing pretty well. And David Edwards, the manager for the Daisies, he just said to me, he goes, listen, man, if there's ever something that you've got prior commitments or whatever, I get it. This is a no stress situation. If you can't do some shows or whatever, just let us know. We'll get somebody to fill in for you. And then when you can come back, you come back. So I think a lot of those names that are on the list are people that have filled in for, just last year, there was 3 guys. Brian Tishy couldn't make part of the KISS tour in Europe. So Tommy Clofetos came in, Tommy for Black Sabbath, he came in and he did that, that run. And then when Brian was free and clear to come back, he came back. So it's the same with Richard. Richard was in a motorcycle accident. We had a guy named Dave Leslie from Baby Animals in Australia. He came in and filled in for Richard after his motorcycle accident. So it was, it's weird. It's kind of a misleading stat on that with the names, and I don't know if I've kind of cleared up or made it more confusing. the kind of the mentality of the band. I think this band right now, Doug, me, David, Brian, and Marco, I mean, we have full intentions of going out and touring and continuing to record and grow and grow and grow, but, unfortunately, like I said, Brian Tichy is always being asked to do sessions. Just a few weeks ago, he did a couple of dates with Steven Tyler and Glenn Felder. You know what I mean? He's always in demand. Marco's in demand. Doug's in demand. So there tends, the way it's been set up is like, yes, we've got a great band here, but David has also set it up so that he doesn't want to interfere with other things that we're doing as well. So it's just like, you know what, if there's a conflict here, you decide you can either do this or go do that. And if you want to go do that, then we'll have someone fill in for you. And when you're done, you come back.
It sounds like you have the best of both worlds, because you can still pursue your solo things, but as long as you're having fun, you also have having fun and being creative. You have the Dead Daisies too.
Yeah, we're having fun. We're being creative. We get to travel all over the world. Honestly, the Daisies are picking up a lot of steam right now, which is great. And the thing of it is, we can, at the same time, like they're they've told us all, like, if you've got something you want to promote, when you're doing your interviews, you talk about that too. You know what I mean? And I do the same thing when I'm doing interviews for my solo thing. I talk about the Daisies, and we kind of cross-collateralize everything, and it's just really easy, man. It really is a no stress situation. I mean, trying to get the schedules together sometimes can be a pain in the ass, but it's really not that big a deal. It's pretty awesome.
The new album, while it's all rock, really does cut across a number of different styles. And I know that people have said that it's almost like you are saluting different artists that have influenced you over the years in some of the styles. Was that a intentional thing, or did it just kind of come out in the recording?
It just kind of came out that way. The only thing that we did is when we got together when we talked to Marty Frederiksen about doing this record, the only thing we said to Marty is we want to do just a great kick-ass 70s style rock and roll record. And that was it. I mean, we really, at that point, when we went in, you got to understand, like, prior to us starting recording or starting the writing process for Make Some Noise, we started in mid-January. We hadn't played a note of music with Doug Aldrich. I mean, we just kind of got into a room at the studio with acoustic guitars, and everybody just started throwing riffs on the table. And we just kind of sifted through everything. And I guess in about 10 days, we did some writing in Nashville. We did some writing in New York. We went back to Nashville, and we started recording. But by the time we actually started hitting the recording process, we had probably put together loose, but still ideas. We probably put together about 22, 23 ideas. In like 10 days, we threw all that together. Then Marty helped us sift through it and pick the best 12 or 13. And, that's just kind of what we went through.
How did you get Marty Frederiksen on board?
I've known Marty since the Scream days. Brian's worked with Marty in the past on several things, so we've all kind of known Marty, but, obviously he's in Nashville. We wanted to do this next record in Nashville. And David Edwards asked me, he said, is there any great producers there? And I said, well, there's Marty Frederiksen and Michael Wagner. So I guess they made a phone call, and I don't know what was said during their conversation. But, the thing that I like about Marty personally is he's a great producer, but he's a great songwriter. If you go back and you look at some of the, he's worked with Aerosmith and Ozzy and Motley and Def Leppard and, but the stuff that he's written with, Stephen and Joe for Aerosmith, songs like Jaded and all, we were kind of excited, man. We're like, okay, let's get this silent member in here and help us out. It's always good having one more, one more set of ears and eyes, you know what I mean? So, Marty was great working with him. He's just, he's kind of like a human version of, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. He's just like this kind of like really mellow dude, just kind of hanging out. He's like, hey man, yeah, cool. Yeah, great part, bro. It's just like this awesome thing. So it was a very, very good experience. So.
Nashville has gone from being country music to being this amazing just music city that so many people I've talked to from so many different genres have gone down there and recorded. How did you find the city? And have you worked there before?
I live there.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I've been there for about 10 years now. And, it's really weird. I went there 10 years ago to... I can't even remember exactly how I fell into it, but this guy was kind of saw me play and knew me as the guy that used to sing with Motley. But then he saw me sit down and do an acoustic show. He was kind of I won't say publisher, but like a publisher. He had a couple of artists on his roster, and he just was like, wow, dude, like I had no idea that you could do acoustic stuff. And I'm like, dude, like every record I've ever done has had at least one acoustic song on it, some of them two. He's like, well, I'd love you to come down and maybe write with some of my writers. And I went down there probably, like I said, 10 years ago, 2005, 2006. I went down for about a week, and they set up some writing appointments with me. And I went in, and it was weird. I just went into a couple bars and some restaurants. And it was weird. Like people actually looked at you and said, how y'all doing? You know what I mean? I'm looking at, are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Like, okay, what do you want? And I just kind of sat and I thought about it. And I'm like, I grew up in Philadelphia, and then I moved, I was in some bands in New York, and then I went to LA. And I just think those bigger cities like that, they just have a way of making you just always on guard. You're on guard.
They're hard.
You're disconnected. Yeah, there's a little, and I get it. I get it, but I'm just like, man, I don't want to live like that. Like and it was just like the traffic and the hustle and the bustle. And, so I just kind of, I went down there. I went down to Nashville a couple of times. And then I don't know what, I had this revelation. I was kind of breaking up with this girl, another girl, it's like whatever. And I was just kind of sitting on the 405 expressway one day, and it literally took me an hour to go one exit, you know what I mean? From one exit to another. And I'm like, you know what? Done with this. I picked the phone up. I called a friend of mine that lived in Nashville who was getting a new house but renting their old house. And I said, how much do you want for the house? And they told me, and I said, I'll be there in like 10 days. I want it. I had stayed at their house. I knew what it was like. I go, I'll be there in 10 days. I want to rent it. And I just went there and I started, and honestly, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I love the music scene there, because I love everything.
Well, it's amazing. Nashville is amazing in that you can walk down that main street,
Broadway,
and Broadway, and walk into almost any establishment, and there's somebody really good playing there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what I was just telling a buddy of mine. I go, every one of those bars that you're talking about, and if obviously you've been there, so it's like from one corner to the other corner, it's wall-to-wall bars on both sides of the street. You can literally at 10 o'clock in the morning, I think it's like 10, maybe 11, but from 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the morning, they have music playing in blocks of like 2 or 3 hours. So one band will come in, they'll set up, they'll play. They all play for tips. Half of these guys are session guys that are just like, they've got a day or two off, whatever. They just come in, they play for tips, and then they tear down, and they either go back to the studio or do whatever. And then like another band comes in for 2 hours, and it's like this all day long in every bar on that street. but they play country, they play rock, and I mean, even some of my buddies, Bobby Blotzer from Rat one time, he's like, oh, what are you going down there? What are you going to start wearing a cowboy hat? Blah, blah, blah. He was kidding with me. And I said, dude, like, I don't think you realize it. Like, it's not a country city. There's blues there. There's jazz there. There's, even new bands. There's Kings of Leon are from there. The Black Keys live there now. Jack White's got a huge complex there where he's got a studio and a record store. He gets up, he writes a song, he records it, and then he prints up a couple copies, and he throws it in his record store for sale. It's awesome. It's a pretty cool town, man, and I'm very pleased that I went there. And apparently now it's like the second largest growing city in America.
It is amazing. I mean, we took a tour of the city while we were there, and the tour guide on the bus was a songwriter and performer that was actually working with Brenda Lee on some things. And it's like, but on the side, just to make the money to live, he was doing tours. And it's like anybody you run into there seems to be in the music business.
Yep.
It's amazing. Hey, the first, I hate to say the first single, because I don't know if singles are even things anymore, but the first track that we heard from the new album was Long Way to Go. Who wrote the song?
It actually started with a David Lowy riff. I do want to say this as an asterisk here. Every song on the record was written by all five of us together. No one guy came in and said, oh, here's a finished song. We all just started with riffs, and the initial riff that you hear in there, David's funny. He'll literally show up at the arena every day. He pours himself a glass of white wine, and then he plugs his guitar in, and he will literally sit there and play for hours. Just whatever, like riffs. He had the riff for that, and then there's a riff in another song on the record called Mine All Mine. And it was just little things, like while he was just sitting there noodling around on the guitar, he came up with that riff, and then he just throws them on his phone and he stores them.
The song Make Some Noise, the title song from the album, is this huge kind of anthemic track, and it sounds like it was made specifically for performing in large arenas. I assume that's going to be part of your set when you go out to play.
Yeah, I would hope so. It was just kind of, and again, without trying, it just started coming together this way. And then we were sitting there going, you know what, dude, I don't know what it is, but this is kind of reminding me of, We Will Rock You a little bit. So it's like our kind of tip of the hat, again, to, one of the greatest bands ever, Queen. And, I love that whole, I saw Queen many times, and I just, that chill that you got when you heard that song, it was like, as soon as you heard those drums, it was like, uh-oh, here it comes, and it was just awesome. So, for lack of a better term, it's our little tip of the hat to those guys, and hopefully it'll connect with the audience, and if we have 1/10 of the success that they had with that song, I'll be a happy little camper.
Also you mentioned tipping the hat to various bands. One of the things the Dead Daisies has done, I believe, on all of their albums is do at least one cover. And this time you've got two with Fortunate Son and Joined Together. How did you go about picking those particular songs?
Honestly, Fortunate Son, we were just kind of doing it last year on tour as an encore song. And it was it's one of those things, man. Like, obviously it was written during the Vietnam era, by an American band, but it's kind of grown to this thing now where it's like, we played it in America, we could play it in Europe. And I mean, the last two shows we did were in Israel last year, and they knew every word. And we're just like, this is just one of those just killer classic. And we talked about recording it, and then we kind of our manager reiterated it when we were in the studio with Marty, and we had put together a bunch of songs, and he goes, man, why don't you guys do that Fortunate Son too, man. He goes, that version you guys did live was killer. So we were set up. We went in, we laid it down, and the way we do everything, we kind of record everything live, you know, and then fix whatever needs to be fixed. But we just went in, and I think the guys recorded it twice or something, maybe 3 times. It was just kind of 1 or 2 takes, and that's what we have. And then Join Together, just for me, I just that song has always been cool, and more than anything, it's just that riff when the band fully kicks in. That riff that the guitar and the bass are doing, I always thought that was one of the heaviest riffs ever. So I said to the guys, I'm like, I think this would work, you know, and been doing some interviews lately with Doug and Brian and all, and everybody was like kind of sitting there going, oh, man, I don't know if this is going to work. But as soon as we played it, everybody's like, awesome. This is killer.
Anything else on the album? I mean, I know that for any artist, their album is their baby and everything is good, but any other tracks that really stand out for you? I'm
really, you know what, it's weird. Like I get up every day and I have a new favorite, you know what I mean? But right now I'm kind of partial to like the song Mainline, All the Same. Then there's one called We All Fall Down. And then The Last Time I Saw the Sun. Those 4, just I want to destroy things when I hear them.
Recently, the Rolling Stones got a tremendous amount of publicity for going down and playing in Cuba, but the fact is that the Dead Daisies did that well before the Rolling Stones did. Any frustration that they got all the publicity and
nah.
You know?
No, you know what? Honestly, it was funny. We took Darryl Jones and Bernard Fowler with us. And, you know, even while we were there, we were doing interviews and we were doing press and all this other stuff. And you know, we said, hey, it's, you know, Bernard and Darryl from the Stones. And, you know, and these fans were just like, please ask Mick Jagger to come here. Please ask Mick Jagger to come here. You know, I think there was some communications between their manager and our manager, you know, like what routes to take and who to talk to. And, you know, they kind of put it together, man. It's, you know, it wasn't, for us, it's not about the glory or like who got the whatever. You know, I'm just happy that bands are starting to go there now. There's such a huge music audience there. I'm just glad they're going. The fans down there, you know, they've been kind of locked away on this little island for a while. They deserve it. You know what I mean? They deserve to have some fun.
And you found the fans were really receptive to everything.
Beyond. Like, it's not even, you know, literally us coming there, they were coming from opposite sides of the island, driving hours to come and see us. We did a club show, and, you know, even it was a large club. I mean, probably held 1,500 people, and there was probably another 2,000 kids out front that couldn't get in. And then we did, our second gig was at this place called, it's kind of it was like an old famous amphitheater that a lot of your salsa and like jazz bands and big bands used to play in like the 40s and 50s. Something La Tropicana or something like whatever. Holds about 7,000. And I mean, it was sold out in like minutes, and there was an overflow. It was just awesome. Like I'm a bit of a history buff, so going there and talking seeing, you know, it's like, oh, this is this is where all that stuff happened. You know what I mean? You know, so it was out of a curiosity level and a historic level. It was interesting, you know, seeing the fans there, and honestly how motivated and driven by music that entire island is. Like, it's just music everywhere.
You got to play with some Cuban musicians too during that, right?
Well, what we did was we went down there, we started rehearsing, and we asked to bring in some Cuban musicians, and, you know, we figured what we'll do is we'll have them, you know, we added some cover songs to our set. You know, we had some stuff where Bernard would sing, I sang some stuff, you know, But we also had some Cuban vocalists come in, and we played, and we had this. I'm bad with names, so we had this one guy. He was a singer, and another girl, and they sang "All Right Now" by Free with me. So they did the verses, and then we all did the choruses together. And then we did Helter Skelter, and we had a guy on saxophone come in and just blow some horn. It was stupid. We had some percussionists come in and play with us, and they were just out of this world. So we had all these different cats come in and play. We did harmonica. We did Hush by Deep Purple, and we had a guy come in and play a harmonica solo. That was just insane. It was a very warm exchange. It was eye-opening for us. It was eye-opening for them. And they were incredibly welcoming to us, and the food was amazing. The music was amazing. The weather was amazing. It was just a great time.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, dude, if you ever can, I guess apparently now it's open for Americans to just go there directly. If you get a chance, I highly, highly recommend that if anybody gets a chance to go to Cuba, leave the politics at home, just go to Cuba and just check it out. It was great. You know what I mean? It really was great.
Experience the country and the people and not worry about all that other garbage.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go, but I want to wish you the very best of luck with the new album. And when it comes around to you releasing some of your solo stuff, let's talk again.
Well, I will definitely be releasing a live album after the Daisies, probably maybe September, October.
Our thanks to John Corabi for once again talking with us. The Dead Daisies' new album, Make Some Noise, is available now. We'll be back soon with more editions of the VVN Music Podcast. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website of this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on September 10th, 2016, and is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2016.